AscendTMS, the world's #1 rated TMS software.
So yeah, the last people that are starting to show up. So let's go ahead and get into this bad boy. I'm gonna go ahead and get into the actual AscendTMS itself. Here we go. And I'm gonna actually blow this up. 1 second. And I do believe it will be that button. There we go. All right. So this is going to be your AscendTMS. This is where you are going to spend the vast majority of your time, especially on the operations side of the AscendTMS. So this is where you'll dispatch your trucks, you'll update your customers, get all that information out to the pertinent parties that need to get it, all from this screen. Now, whether you've used the TMS before or even an Excel spreadsheet, and I hope not in this day and age, but a whiteboard, you know that you have a workflow of some sorts, and AscendTMS is no different, though it is customizable, and it's actually going to be based off of two things. One is going to be the load statuses running off the left of the screen, and the load tabs running across the top. So right now I'm in active. I have planning. You can see that I have a different load status set here. I also have ready for accounting and miscellaneous, which will be your big four. You also have my loads, which will be every live load that you have access to. And I specifically say that you have access to because there are ways to separate data inside of AscendTMS based off of permissions and branches and a few other things inside of Ascend. My loads will be loads that are assigned to you based off of different roles, whether you're a sales agent, dispatch agent, customer manager, whatever it may be. And externally posted loads will be where you manage the integrations of our load postings, like our load boards, DAT, truck stop, stuff like that, that we have integrated inside of the AscendTMS. So that's where, and we'll get more into that a little bit later into the webinar. So back to my active loads. I did say this was customizable, and I wasn't lying. On the top left-hand side, you'll see this little cogwheel, and where it says customize tabs, you'll actually not be changing the names of the tabs themselves, but what you'll do is change the names of the load statuses to match whatever verbiage you and your team are most used to or most comfortable with. You can even change the color that will appear on the load management screen if you're a visually stimulated person like myself. That's definitely key. And then you can choose whether you want it to go into an individual or multiple load tabs when you have that load status selected. And that's going to be a systemic change. That's why it's the workflow foundation. Every AscendTMS user under this AscendTMS account will use the same load statuses, and every time that they update those load statuses, they're going to go into the same load tab no matter what you do. As the individual user, you do have control over the layout of your load management screen. That's going to be based off of the columns running across the top, things like your load statuses, last contact, picks. I'm not going to read off all of them. All right, if I scroll to the right, you can see that I have more information as we keep going. So you want to make sure that you have the pertinent information or the key information that you're looking for, obviously closest to the left. That way you don't have to scroll around and find it. Also, you want to make sure the information that you're looking at is exactly what you need to accomplish your job. And that's very doable, again, inside of AscendTMS, based off of not customized tabs, but customized table. So this is where you'll actually set up your location display preference as well. So whether you want the locations to be displayed in location name or city and state, you have your table font size settings. Let's try that again. Table font size settings, as well as down here at the bottom, a list of all the columns. Now, if you can imagine this list, instead of top to bottom, would be left to right on the actual load management screen itself. If you have a green check mark in show column, that means it's going to be shown. If you have a green check mark in truncate column, it means it's going to be truncated or shortened. All right, red X means the opposite of both of those. Now, I actually don't have my carrier set up because the last webinar that I did was as a carrier, so I didn't need to show the carrier column, but I want to do that on this one because I'm a 3PL or a broker or a shipper. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that on. I'm actually going to turn my driver off. I'm going to click save and return. It's going to bring me right back to my load management screen. And just like that, I have a 1-for-1 swap. It just happened to work out that way. But where it used to say driver, now says carrier. Okay. When it comes to visibility of that key data, there's a few different things that we want to be able to do inside of the AscendTMS. First of all is just finding data, which is very easy to do. And I know this kind of seems like a no-duh situation, but if you use the search in the top left-hand side, it will search the whatever tab that you have selected. So if you had a driver that just didn't know anything about his load but his name, you could type in his name and it'll actually pull up that information. You'll notice that I don't even have the driver column selected still, but it'll still pull that information up for me because it's somewhere on a load. Okay, now speaking of somewhere on a load, if I wanted to see that driver's name, actually any of my key data, I have high visibility on that without having to physically go into a load, more so than a lot of people out in our TMS marketplace. Is going to be clicking on anything with an underline that has the little dotted line underneath it, and it's going to get what's called the expanded information box. So this is going to go ahead and get my full carrier information, including my driver David, right? I could get my full pickup address, my delivery address, my last contact, which are any of the check calls that have happened, which we haven't even talked about yet, reference numbers, PO numbers. All I have to do is back that up and I get all my other loads as well. But you have that visibility of key data inside of AscendTMS at literally a click. So it's a lot easier to find that information with using in conjunction both of those to be able to either dispatch your drivers or to, again, update your customers, because this industry is all about making sure the right people are updated and everybody has the right information, right? Let's talk about the check calls as well. Sorry, I had a little bit of a brain fart where I was at right there. So I already mentioned check calls. So let's go ahead and start talking. Oh, I'm sorry. I kind of got ahead of myself. Let's talk about posting loads, okay? Because that's all going to be done from this screen as well. You're going to be go ahead and post the loads. You do that simply by clicking post loads here at the top, or you can do it as an individual load. You can see all the load boards that I have integrated currently for this test account, including one that's not being shown, which would be C4 by Cargo Chief. But I have 1, 2, 3 load board, DAT, post everywhere, trucker path, truckstop.com, next load, and smart capacity, as well as C4 from Cargo Chief, as I mentioned earlier. Now, before everybody gets too excited, this doesn't mean that you get DAT and truck stop for free. You still have to have accounts with these load boards for this to be able to work. What Ascend does is it allows you to do all of your load posting without having to have multiple tabs open in your browser, or going back and forth or uploading spreadsheets or however load posting's done nowadays. You do it all from just 2 mouse clicks. You click post loads there, you click post loads here, all of your freight is posted. And it's all based off of whatever screen you're looking at. So if I choose my planning loads and click post loads, you can see that I have a lot less options because I have a lot less loads. You can put in a posted rate, you put your posted notes on the load while you're building it, and then literally 2 mouse clicks and you have all that freight out for the masses to be able to select from. You will get some of those for free, things like a 1, 2, 3 load board. You'll get trucker path, next load, and C4 for free just for being a AscendTMS customer. So if you want DAT, post everywhere, truck stop, and smart capacity as well, you'd have to pay for those accounts. I know Post Everywhere does do an AscendTMS discount. This one says 57% off, so you get $30 a month for Post Everywhere. So if you want to go ahead and take advantage of that deal, I would definitely do it. But if you don't want to, or you don't want to pay for all those load boards, you don't have to. The integration itself is completely free. We don't charge you anything extra for that. We just provide the bridge for you, and that's included inside of your AscendTMS subscription. So let's talk about your actual day-to-day routine stuff. So check calls, right? We all have had to make a check call at least once in our life, especially in this industry. Check calls are kind of the key to getting information. We have a few different ways of doing that inside of AscendTMS. If I right-click anywhere on the load, I'll get what's called my shortcut menu. This shortcut menu is your best friend. It allows you to do everything inside of a load, editing the load, viewing or sending the load documents, because AscendTMS does generate your load documents for you. And then our different check call options. First and foremost would be what we call the manual check call. Right, this is the tried and true method. I picked up the phone, I called somebody. It says driver's name and driver mobile number. It's whoever you spoke to. I can put in a check call details, so what the information was exchanged on that call, the status description and reason for status. If you guys are wondering if we are EDI capable at AscendTMS, the answer is yes. We even have our reason codes and our status descriptions already mapped for those EDI updates. So we already got you covered on that. You can apply the check call to either one of the locations on the load, or you can actually enter in the current truck location where it is right then and there. Date, time, you click log check call, it updates your last contact. By the way, your last contact is every check call and other update that you've received. If you guys didn't know, we also have a carrier portal. I don't have time to go into it, but we do have a carrier portal for you guys to be able to use inside of AscendTMS. So all those updates that you get from the portal will also feed into your last contact. But for this purpose, we're just going to talk about check calls. So all the different check calls will actually update your last contact. It's also feeding into what's called your load log. Your load log is a chronological order of all the check calls that have happened on the load. It's even color coded to show the different types of check calls. Now, the rest is what we like to call the automated check call processes, things like request documents from driver and sending a text message. Those work pretty much the same exact way. They'll get a message that you can customize that are being sent out from the system. And what happens next is purely based off of how the driver responds. If the driver responds with just a regular text message, hey, how do you do? I'm running on time, everything's fine. What's my pickup number? It'll update your last contact and feed into your load log. If he sends back an image or a document, whether it's through text, whether it's an upload or a photo or a PDF, whatever it is, it'll automatically not only upload to your AscendTMS, but also attach itself to that specific load. You can see two examples of this towards the bottom. We have these two documents down here, right next to who the sender or the upload source was. It also says via text message. So it's pretty self-explanatory in that sense. Now, the beauty of this is, one, the driver doesn't need to download anything, right? He doesn't take any type of application. All he needs to do is have a smartphone. And again, and this is going to be a common trend inside of AscendTMS, it's free and it's unlimited, right? So you can use these requests as much as you want, and it's not going to cost you anything extra inside of Ascend. You guys can text all of your drivers at the beginning of each one of your loads, be like, hey, if you have any updates or any images or any OS&Ds, just respond back with this text message, okay? That's actually a great use of it, by the way. Again, other types of check calls are going to be tracking. If you guys don't like to pay for third-party tracking, you do have some included inside of AscendTMS. You have the ability to send a single tracking message. Again, works pretty much the same way as the other two. The only difference is it'll have a link associated with it. Once the driver clicks that link, it'll ping back his location and put it on a map, which I'll show you where that exists in a little bit. The enable auto tracking will be setting that up, or that request. This one's set up for every 6 hours. You can set up for every hour, every 2 hours, however long that you want in between the updates. Also, this is where you'll set up your third-party integrations like my ForkKites, Smart Capacity, and TransFlow. Now, if you guys are familiar with Smart Capacity and TransFlow, you'll know that they do more than just tracking. We have deeper integrations with them than just tracking. Again, I just don't have the time to cover it today. I only get you for 30 minutes. So in that case, if you guys have those or you want to learn more about that, I'll show you where to find that information. But all that information is being fed tracking wise into the load log with a map, or if you're inside of the load, it's just called the load log. Again, you have your recent events, and then you have these little pin drops on the right hand or the left hand side that will have dates and times associated when those tracking events have occurred. You can zoom in with Google Maps, obviously, to see exactly where these guys are. I just have a pretty broad image, and obviously mine are kind of all over the place because I just use examples. I'm not actually running freight. So you would have a more consistent breadcrumb trail of where exactly this load has gone. And the last place I do want to go into is going to be my edit stops, not to show you that you can actually, add stops to a load. I would hope as a TMS system that I could do that. But because one of the biggest questions I get asked, especially by new users or people that are looking at AscendTMS for the first time, is if we calculate miles. And if we do calculate miles, are they true commercial miles? And the quick answer to both of those is yes. But obviously I want to give you a little bit more information than just, yes, we do that. So yes, we calculate miles. Yes, we do do commercial miles, and they're brought to you by a company called PTV Group. PTV Group, for those of you that don't know who they are, they're owned by Porsche. They did European logistics originally, made their way into the American market many years ago, currently doing all the routing for DHL, Coca-Cola. Those are the biggest names I could think of off the top of my head to name drop. That being said, you can bet your bottom dollar with big companies like that using them for actual routing that these are true commercial miles. Now, we also understand that when you're doing these types of runs, or no matter what type of run you're doing, there might be a conflict of miles, whether it's from the carrier or the customer. So we do have the ability down here at the bottom to customize the miles that would be displayed on the documents, i.e. the carrier mileage, which would be going out on your carrier confirmations, and your customer miles, which would be going out on your invoices. And you can change that by clicking the pencil, putting in whatever value that you want, and then saving it. Very easy. You can revert it just by clicking the little semicircle right next to it to the calculate miles here. So that's it really for the operations side. Let's talk about some database stuff. And when I mean database stuff, I mean the things that you'll be storing inside of AscendTMS, like your locations, your customers, and your carriers. When adding new customers and locations, it's very easy. It's doing a Google search in the background for you. So if I wanted to add a new target, I would just start typing in target. You can see it's already starting to fill out that information. If it just happened to be one of these, I could select it. If I wanted to get more specific with it and say I wanted one in Buffalo, I could actually type in Buffalo, and it'll actually obviously pick out the targets in Buffalo for me. Fills in all the information for me. The only thing I'd have to update is my primary contact info. I click save, and then I'm good to go. Same thing for my customers. Same thing for my carriers, but with my carriers, we actually took it one step further. Again, what I'm about to show you is included inside of your AscendTMS subscription for no additional cost. And this is great, especially for my new guys that are just starting out in the industry, because we already know that you're trying to save as much money on as you can when it comes to overhead. So top left hand of my screen, on my blue menu, it says search. Typically this is used for internal searching, like profiles, load numbers, whatever it may be. But if I preface the search, say I'm talking to a carrier and he gives me his MC number, so MC 443556, just like that. That's exactly how you'll type it, and I'll get two results. So this shows you two things. One, I can look up internally, and this is a good habit to get into when you first starting inside of AscendTMS, by the way. Anytime you're on the phone with anybody, you're an agent, a broker, whatever it may be, just go to the search bar, type in their MC number, or if you were to look up their DOT number, you type in DOT and then the DOT number. And I have two results. The first one has a little truck symbol next to it, and to the right of it, it says carrier. Okay, so I'm going to unhighlight it. That way you guys can read that a little bit better. Okay, so when it says carrier, that means it's already in my system. I could then go to that profile to see how these guys are already set up and if I need to update any information. If I have a little magnifying glass like down here at the bottom and it says carrier verification, I click that, and if that's the only result I have, that means that person's not in my AscendTMS system already. What this is doing is it's pulling information from the FMCSA to give you about a 10,000 foot view of this particular carrier to see how set up they are. Now, if you want to add them, in this case, they don't have a lot of good information. I probably wouldn't use them. Not that these guys are a bad carrier. I'm just not sure how up to date their information is with the FMCSA. But if you wanted to, I could click this blue button. It would add it to my carrier profile list. For one that's already set up, or that one has a little bit more accurate information inside the FMCSA, we're going to go to my example carrier down here at the bottom. And once I've added them to my system, I'm going to have what's called a carrier verification area. And this will give me a lot of good information: number of power units, my authority statuses, my out of service dates, safety ratings, a list of inspections, as well as the map of all the inspections that they have up to date. You can see these are kind of out of order when it comes to date wise right now, but you can go ahead and see that they're just probably filling out the information as they're getting it to the FMCSA, and some basic insurance information on file as well. So it's, again, a good tool, especially if you're first starting out in the industry and you have no verification. It's also, if you already have carrier verification inside of your whatever you're using today, this is also good to use in conjunction. So now that we've talked about, I've got loads in the system, I've got carriers and customers and locations in my database. The only next natural progression, in my opinion, would be to report on that information that I've received into my AscendTMS. And that's going to be very easy to do inside of Ascend. We have what's called a dynamic reporting tool. So all I have to do is fill out whatever search terms. You'll see nowhere where it says customer or location or carrier, because they all fall under the same category, which is going to be load entities, right? So if I wanted to put in a customer or I want to run a customer report, I would just type in the customer name and then select it. I had 2 instances of Dr. Pepper, Dallas, Fort Worth, by the way. One said location, one said customer, right? So if I want to do a customer report, I'm going to pick the customer. If I want to do the location report, I'd pick the location. I click search loads. Now, down here at the bottom is a preview of the report. This is exactly how it will look like, or it'll be the same information that's going to be exported to Excel or CSV format. If you guys don't use Microsoft Office, we've got you covered. But this is great for good information at literally just a fingertip, right? So I can just look at all this information. I can scroll through here, whatever information that I'm looking for. Maybe it's a rate, right? And it's a lane that I'm trying to figure out if I've ran before. And if it is, I can go ahead and quote for more or less given on the fuel prices, whatever it may be, all right here. And I didn't have to actually export it. Up here at the top, probably my favorite as somebody that's had to run these reports as a broker in the past, is the summary of the report. This gives me all my KPIs I'm typically looking for when I'm doing a customer or a carrier or a location report. My total revenue, my total expenses, my total profit, my averages, even broken down to the per mile. I even have a gross margin percentage. So I have miles, and I didn't have to be a mathematician or an Excel spreadsheet guru for me to figure this information out. It did it for me automatically just by pulling the report. Okay, now I did a pretty open report. I know you're probably thinking, and I've got people on this call that are probably thinking, well, Cameron, I have to fill out the origin, destination, date range, all my internal search criteria like user assignment branches and load statuses. Every time I do this report, I have to run this report 3 times a day, which I know isn't a realistic actually expectation of running a report, but I'm just trying to be as outlandish as possible because that's not quite the case. You just have to fill out the search criteria once. If it's something that you know you're going to run often, you click save report and it's going to exist in this drop down menu above. Right, you can see I already have customer report for Dr. Pepper. What it does for me is it adds the Texas to Florida origin destination, and it puts in a search term of Dr. Pepper because I wasn't creative enough to think of anything else for a search term, right? I can then rerun my report. You can see I now have 16 loads versus 18. My KPIs have changed. I actually have a way better gross margin percentage on this lane apparently, and all I had to do is use the drop down menu. And I know I'm using customer reports, but again, you can do this for a carrier report to see how well a carrier's run for you or if this carrier is profitable for you. You could also do this by locations to see exactly how these lanes are running for you. It's completely up to you guys. So it's very open-ended. That's why it's called a dynamic reporting tool. Other reports that I have that I'm not going to go ahead and cover are going to be things like your commissions reports, because we do have commissions that you can set up inside of the system for your users and your agents. If you guys have an asset-based, I know this isn't the asset-based webinar, but we do have an if the tax calculator report as well. It helps you guys do your taxes, or won't do it for you, but it will help you. You can purchase insurance through UPS Capital in their Insure Shield product. So you'll have an additional insurance report. That's great, especially if you guys do a lot of high valued loads, or if you're trying to especially get in the door with a lot of these customers. You can actually purchase a one-time policy per load to be able to cover that excess. So say you have a 100,000 policy and you need to go up to the $150,000, you can actually purchase that $50,000 of excess coverage right here inside of AscendTMS. You don't have to leave it, and it only costs you a small fee. And again, it's only for that one particular load. So very easy for you guys to be able to do. I actually have users that have really saved their butts during the weekends when they had carrier fall offs, or their customer had a carrier fall off and they needed to cover freight. And they made like 10,000 in GP literally in a weekend just because they had the ability to purchase their insurance through AscendTMS. So and then you also have your ARAP report, which is your accounts receivable and your accounts payable report. So This is based off of when you send an invoice or you record a received bill. That in itself, not very exciting, but you can export this to an Excel spreadsheet, and my users seem to like to use this as a collection sheet for accounts receivable. So they'll export it, break it down by customer. It breaks all the loads down, how many days past due they are, and then you can total it up and send that out to the customer in the email and be like, hey, or whoever is supposed to be paying you for this freight, be like, hey, I need to get paid on these loads. These are the loads that are past due. Let's see what we could do to rectify this, right? So very interesting that my users are the ones that actually came up for the use case on that one. And then the magic really happens when it comes to accounting in your invoices and bills area. This is where you'll send an invoice. You have all of your statuses available to you, your company name, invoice number. You even have the last load status it was left in before it was sent to accounting, right? Sent status, invoice date, due date, invoice total, balance, and then here to the right you'll see where it says QBO export. Yes, it stands for QuickBooks Online. We also have a QuickBooks desktop integration as well, so don't feel like you're left out if you have one or the other. We have you covered on both. You can select one invoice, and that's when you'll start to get ahead and get the options to what you can do with that invoice, or you can select multiple, which is exactly what I plan to do. I'm gonna go ahead and grab 3 of these. And from the right hand side, let's talk about the options that you have. So the first one you probably notice, it says factor invoices. Just for clarification, we are not a factoring company, but we do have integrated partners that are factoring companies that will allow you to factor directly from AscendTMS to whatever portal that they're using. Okay. Don't worry though, if you're not using one of our partner factoring companies, you can still use AscendTMS, and we still have ways to make your life easier when it comes to your processes with that factoring company, whether it's a notice of assignment stamp that's customized specifically for you and your company, or different email bundles that we can go ahead and do. So you also have the ability to receive a payment, export invoice to QuickBooks, and then actually email the invoice out. The email process, very easy, pretty straightforward. It's broken down by customer. So I have 3 invoices for Dr. Pepper Dallas Fort Worth. If I had another 3 for another customer, I'd go through the same steps for that. But I do want to talk about supporting documents. So supporting documents, you can see I have no supporting documents for any of these invoices. So the way that this works is, remember when I said you could receive those documents from drivers? Well, obviously you can upload them as well. All right, under document management, you could then do what's called document processing, or you could do this on a load. It's completely up to you. But document processing will actually have a list of all the documents that need to have something done with them. They're not attached to a load. They're not attached to the customer or a carrier, and they're not labeled the document type. So if you don't have that done, and you go into your accounting and start going through that process that I was just talking about, eventually I'll get back to where I was. There we go. Click email invoices, supporting documents. So if you have no docs found, that's because one of those steps wasn't followed, right? You either didn't upload the document, you didn't choose the document type, or you didn't attach it to the customer. Until that is done, it's considered unprocessed, right? And then it won't be considered a supporting document. And it's not here to scare you. It's just a big question that I get asked, especially from new users. Well, why can't I see this document? I'm trying to get this out so I can get invoiced or get paid faster. And that's exactly what we plan to do. Now, bills works pretty much the same exact way as the invoices. The only difference being, obviously, you're not going to send a bill. You're going to record a received bill. We do a great job of letting you know when you haven't done that, because none of your information populates, and you get a big fat 0 where it says bills. You can record payments against both the invoices and the bills inside of the system to get what's called your paid in full symbol, green rectangle of victory, when it right next to the balance to pay. Okay. And last, and certainly not least, inside of the system at least, is going to be your settings. Now, this is specifically for my admins because they're the only ones that have access to this area, but this is where you'll set up your company contact info. You can edit your drop-down list, things like your commodity, your load statuses, which we already talked about, pay items, truck length, truck type, and truck status. You also have the ability to upload your company logo. That way the system-generated documents will have your logo on them when they're being sent from the system. You have the ability to customize your documents with T's and C's and footers. You also can set up your alerts in automated workflow engine. I don't have time to really go into the automated workflow engine, but it is a super cool tool. Not to rhyme like an 80s rapper, but I just did. So you have the ability to set up different rules and automated workflow processes inside of AscendTMS based off of check calls and different scenarios. I can just scroll through this, but again, I'll show you where to find more information about that as well. You also have full control over your users. So you never have to call us to actually add, delete, or remove a user. That's the same thing for your permissions. You as an admin can set up all of your permissions groups. Again, I'm not going to go through every in each of these permissions because I'm not trying to bore you guys to death. But the big takeaway from this, again, admins are the only ones that have access to settings. You can't add it to any of these permissions groups, right? I can click this. This will go ahead and make a check mark. I can uncheck it, but I can click this until I'm blue in the face. It's not going to happen. There's no settings to be added.
For any additional questions, feel free to reach out to my amazing support team at support@inmotionglobal.com.
AscendTMS, the logistics software for everyone. To stay up to date with the latest help videos and tutorials for AscendTMS, click that subscribe button. That way you can always be the first to know.